So here we are with less than a month to go until the decade comes to a close. This has been an interesting one for certain. We went from the 7th gen to the 8th gen, had several games that were absolutely amazing and several games that were terrible, and a few just right in between. Actually, probably most were just right in between. This was a pretty good decade for games, and since it's a special occasion for the end of the decade and next year is 2020, instead of the traditional just top 10, I'm doing a top 20. This is the top 20 games of the 2010s, and that's weird to say, the 2010s, I feel like. Also, keep in mind that this is just my opinion. Please put down your rifles. And, yeah, alright, let's get on with the list. Also, just before we begin, don't ask why the first minute and a half of this clip is just my Destiny character just sitting in the menu. I don't know. Gameplay was just recorded like that. It'll change, so yeah. Alright, coming in at number 20, Super Mario Odyssey from 2017. Mario Odyssey came out in 2017 as the first 3D environment Mario since 2013's Super Mario 3D World on the Wii U. It was a huge system seller for the Switch, which had just come out several months earlier, and let me just say this, the game is absolutely spectacular. Everything in it is just breathtaking fun combined with the spectacular trademark Nintendo gameplay, and I was really impressed with the game itself, and it was really impressive that it was able to work as well as it did on the Switch, given that this was when the game released. The Switch was still a very new console at that time. The Switch was new, and we only had a few, like, Nintendo system sellers. Like, Breath of the Wild had come out a few months earlier as a launch title, and shortly after came Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. But Mario Odyssey was special due to being unbelievable by Nintendo standards. The game was almost unbelievable. I did talk about this game on the video I made a number of months ago where I ranked all the 3D Mario games, so go check that video out. But this game is incredible. The gameplay is said to be like a spiritual successor to Mario 64, which I'm not really sure if I agree with, but it's definitely impressive. Super Mario Odyssey is amazing and just cracks the bottom of the list. Number 19, Fallout New Vegas from 2010. I played Fallout New Vegas for the first time on a PC about 2 years ago, having previously only played Fallout 3 and 4. I played it for a bit and was almost instantly blown away on how expansive and open it was. Sure, Fallout is kind of known for being open, but New Vegas was on another level entirely. Miles above Fallout 3 and 4 will ever be. Not that either of those games are bad by any means, I think they're both really good. However, New Vegas, in my opinion and the opinion of so many others, is the absolute masterpiece among all of the Fallout games. And it's so mind-boggling to me that Bethesda whipped up Fallout 3 in 2008, a game that was already a masterpiece, and it took I believe 2 years, and then just a little over 2 years later, in 2010, New Vegas comes out under Obsidian's development, a different developer entirely, and says, "Look at my almighty power." I reviewed New Vegas before I reviewed New Vegas before as part of a 4-part review series of Bethesda games leading up to Fallout 76, which I won't go any further on than I already have because it has something to do with Fallout 76, but New Vegas is just such a good game. If you haven't already played it, I highly recommend it. It's so good. Coming in at number 18 is Bloodborne from 2015. After Dark Souls 2 failed to live up to the expectations of an already brilliant first game despite being still a good game, From Software said, "Well, that went well, just not as well as we'd hoped." Then they released Bloodborne as their second IP as a PS4 exclusive. Bloodborne takes a lot of elements from Dark Souls, such as the infamous difficulty that From Software games have come to be known for by this point with Dark Souls, Bloodborne, and Sekiro alike. Bloodborne has a difficulty not necessarily as hard as Dark Souls 3 or Sekiro would end up being, but it was still the primary talking point of the game, much like every other From Software game that has ever come out. It's honestly amazing. I would say, however, if you're not willing to play a game that's considered challenging on a From Software level, it isn't for you. Number 17, Doom from 2016. It's an utter miracle that the Doom reboot ended up being as good as it is. This is honestly the greatest gaming reboot of all time. It's definitely a game that I'll review someday, but in the meantime, let me talk about it here. Doom 2016 is a prime example of brilliant game design in the modern gaming. The visuals are nice and crisp, the gameplay is amazing, glory kills are some of the most guttural parts of a first-person shooter of the modern era. Snap map is an outstanding feature that unfortunately doesn't get very much recognition. The multiplayer gets a bad rep from most people, myself included, but it can be forgiven by the outstanding gameplay and, again, spectacular snap map. It's a miracle this game didn't suck. After Doom went 11 years without a new game, and Duke Nukem Forever released as one of the worst games ever made after spending a decade in development hell, the hopes for the Doom reboot weren't very high. Doom 3 was the last Doom game at that point, released way back in 2005. Then, Doom Eternal comes out next year, after having recently been delayed. Doom is a legendary franchise that brought first-person shooters to the forefront as a genre, arguably way back in 1993. Here we are in 2019, 3 years after Doom 2016, and not only did the game genuinely reinvent itself, but it also made sure to do so in a way that made people happy. Play this game. Number 16, Super Mario Maker 2 from 2019. This is the most recent game on the list. Mario Maker as a series has done something incredible. The first one in 2015 was a game that I personally thought would just be another level editor to fill Mario's stock, but then it came out and was actually really good. It had interaction, playing other people's levels was dumb fun, but it was fun nonetheless, and now here we are with the sequel. Mario Maker 2 comes out, and in my opinion, it's even better actually. It works really well on the Switch. Lots of people were raving about slopes being added, the customization, dumb fun, crazy nonsense, and options overall are through the roof and doubled from the first game. I will say this, when I got the game, I didn't like the controls that much, but I certainly got used to it over time. Super Mario Maker 2 is absolutely amazing. Now let me say that in a couple years, should Mario Maker 3 ever happen, I know this might be a lot to ask, I want to be able to create and edit 3D levels. That would be a great idea. Imagine being able to edit or create 3D Mario levels. That would be amazing. Overall, I love the game. At the moment, for the last few months, it's the game I've been playing on my Switch the most. Number 15, Call of Duty Black Ops from 2010. Okay, so immediately, somebody is going to scoff at me for putting a Call of Duty game on the same list as all these other games, but hear me out. I am a little biased, COD being one of my favorite franchises. I also think that Black Ops is actually brilliant. I mean, it's amazing, too, how this game was released 9 years ago, but still has about 1 million people playing it. My review for this game is the most viewed video on my channel, but flexing aside, the game is absolutely amazing. The campaign is fantastic, the Reznov twist is brilliant writing. Alex Mason is a character that you grow to become actually emotionally connected with, given his character development, and the multiplayer is amazing too. It's balanced, but not obnoxiously balanced, as good as Modern Warfare 2 did with being obnoxiously balanced. The zombies, in my opinion at least, is the best rendition of zombies that has ever been in a COD game. The Call of Duty franchise, especially in recent years, hasn't gotten a great rep, but this is, or was, still is, an amazing game. It's something you should definitely pick up, especially since people are still playing it. But yeah. Number 14, Borderlands 2 from 2012. If I had $1 for how much I enjoy and love Borderlands 2, I would be richer than the president. Borderlands 2 did something that most other FPS games just can't seem to do nowadays, and that's have actual life, humor, and substance. Borderlands 3 recently came out, and I actually really like it, but Borderlands 2 was the crowning achievement of the series, the masterpiece. I love them all, and I have reviewed this game, but speaking about it again, Borderlands 2 is a fun, humorous, action-filled FPS that is basically the prototype to Destiny, I would say, Borderlands is. I think it's definitely worth picking up. Making your way through the game isn't at all a chore. It's enjoyable, especially given all the new characters you meet along the way. It's truly amazing, and definitely a game worth picking up. If you're into games like Destiny, but have never played a Borderlands game, I would highly suggest it. Number 13, Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain from 2015. Oh, Konami, what happened to you? What happened last year with Metal Gear Survive was an absolute, complete travesty. Konami defecated all over Hideo Kojima's legacy. Anyways, at least we still have this to look over. Metal Gear Solid 5 is the culmination of Kojima's brilliant vision that had spanned across 17 years. All of the Solid games are considered consistently spectacular, and the Phantom Pain doesn't at all break that trend. Phantom Pain is expert-level game design. There's so much creativity to how you can approach different situations. There's so much depth to the game. It's a genre-defying game to get a little Kojima on you, which Kojima is usually known for delivering himself. And the story, while not entirely perfect, was only as bad as a Metal Gear Solid story could be, i.e. only sometimes and only slightly. Definitely a game worth picking up, especially over Metal Gear Survive, and honestly I've heard mixed things about Death Stranding, but it doesn't particularly pique my interest. Number 12, Super Mario Galaxy 2 from 2010. While Super Mario Odyssey just scraped the bottom of the list, Super Mario Galaxy 2 takes the number 12 spot for me for just being amazing. I got this game the day it launched on the Wii. I was like 6 years old, but Super Mario Galaxy being one of my favorite games of all time, the first one, and the sequel is no slouch. It primarily takes the brilliant level design of the first game and just goes to town on it. Every single level is just a platforming dream. The game pulls out all the stops, and it's the same story for essentially every Mario game, which is why Mario isn't played for the story as much as it is the insane level design, really good game mechanics, and so many other things. There's so much depth to this game, and it still feels like it's barely even gotten started with what its engine is even capable of. While I don't think we'll ever see a Galaxy 3, personally, I'm perfectly satisfied with what we have. Galaxy 2 is a masterclass experience. Number 11. Middle-earth Shadow of War from 2017. I'm going to keep this one brief since I actually have a review for Shadow of War on the way. But if this game proved anything to me, it's that game design literally has no limit to itself at all. While Shadow of Mordor was very critically acclaimed, and I'll play that eventually, likely when I'm done with my Shadow of War review, to me, it's Shadow of War that got my attention first due to the fact that it's a really cool Lord of the Rings game, and also I was told about that before I was Shadow of Mordor. But it's also just straight up a really fun game. The story is great, sieging fortresses is so fun. I'll definitely get more into this when I review the game, but it's amazing. Pick it up. Number 10, Red Dead Redemption from 2010. This is just another game in a long line of legendary Rockstar masterpieces. There's just so much to Red Dead that makes it one of the best games ever made. The story, the open world, the characters, everything about it is just absolutely amazing. Red Dead 2 has you playing as John Marston, an outlaw in the Wild West, which is slowly coming to an end, and you have to adapt with the times while also facing the hauntings of your past. Outside of the excellent story with a heart-wrenching ending, the open world is also pretty neat. There are multiple different places in the game and that are astonishing places to visit. While Rockstar kind of dropped the ball with both iterations of Red Dead Online, it's completely fine because the single player is still there and it's brilliant. The opening cutscene to the game, while it may be a little long, is still my favorite opening to any game ever. Definitely pick this up, especially if you're a fan of Rockstar games. It's so good. Number 9, Mass Effect 2, 2010. BioWare did something special with Mass Effect 2, something they did fuck all with Anthem and Andromeda. I have played through all of the Mass Effect games, and it's truly unfortunate that Andromeda turned out the way that it did, and Anthem just kind of speaks for itself. Mass Effect 2 is one of the games of the decade, and it takes my number 9 spot. I originally played Mass Effect 2, having finished the first game, being a fan of BioWare's Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic games, and Mass Effect 2 just blew me away entirely. It gives you so much creative freedom, it's absolutely nuts. BioWare introduced side missions in Mass Effect 2, which also help a great deal. In my opinion, if you're a fan of sci-fi RPGs, this is absolutely a game you should check out. It's an absolute masterpiece to the fullest of the word. And, you know, Commander Shepard has his quirky voice lines, as he normally does. But yeah, it's definitely a game you should check out, and if you don't, I'll cut your balls off and feed them to a Krogan. Number 8, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, 2018. I'm going to speak bold words here when I say that Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is the greatest fighting game of all time. I have said what I said, and I mean it. Seriously, as the title suggests, this is indeed the ultimate Smash game. Smash 4 was really good, one of the best games on the Wii U. However, the launch of the Nintendo Switch in 2017 meant that a new Smash game was on the horizon, and that was what we got. At E3 2018, Nintendo announced that Smash 5 would be called Super Smash Bros. Ultimate and would have every single character and stage in the franchise history. The Smash community, as they do, went absolutely mental. Look at the reactions of people like Etika, Zero, Shofu. The game was absolutely amazing. There's every previous Smash character as well as new ones. The game finally sold me on getting a Switch, and I don't regret having one now. If you have a Switch, get this game. I don't care. Get it. Number 7, Titanfall 2 from 2016. I don't need to explain this. Titanfall 2 was just an absolute masterpiece, the living definition of a surprise. This game, ahead of release, was just another game that would never have thought to have been a masterpiece. It was just another game that would have just been a thought like it's another multiplayer shooter sequel in an already oversaturated market. The game was awesome. I love the first Titanfall, and I'll review it eventually. But this game was even better. This game introduced a full-on single-player campaign with actual characters and an actual plot. Respawn Entertainment so much more than delivered on Titanfall 2. It's especially sad that Titanfall 3 had, at the moment, been cancelled, although it's apparently something EA will look into in the future. You can't see it, but I'm doing quotations with my fingers. And even though Titanfall 2 launched at a bad time, and even if Titanfall 3 never happens, Titanfall 2 is more than enough to satisfy me. Absolutely amazing game. Definitely something you should pick up. Number 6, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild from 2017. This fucking game blew me away. It's the type of game you could sink like 300 plus hours into and still come across something new you had never seen before. Not only that, but it also has an amazing story, astonishing set pieces, and masterful game design. I was so surprised with the difficulty too. It's an actually hard game. I had played Ocarina of Time on the 3DS and Skyward Sword on the Wii before this, but Breath of the Wild is the game that was truly my generation's Zelda experience. The game that was my generation's Ocarina of Time. It's truly astonishing. Not to mention that the open world is absolutely beautiful. There's so much you can do. There's so much to do in this game that just makes it one of my favorite games, not just of the decade, but of all time. I love this game, and it's hard for me to get burnt out on it. I will say I dislike the climbing and the weapon durability, and cooking is kind of frustrating sometimes, but other than that, Breath of the Wild is an absolute masterpiece that I can't recommend enough if you have a Switch or a Wii U, especially if you're a Zelda fan. Number 5, Halo Reach from 2010. I have such a deep, meaningful connection with Reach. Not only is it a game I'm constantly recommended to review, despite the fact that I already have, but it's just that one game, like, it's the first Halo game that I got to play when it came out as a fan. It just arrived as PC as well, so on PC as well. So all in all, I guess this is considered perfect timing. There was just so much to Reach that made it what it was to me, and such an absolutely awesome experience. As a prequel to Combat Evolved, Reach did something no other form of narrative at the time was really willing to do with its campaign. That was make it less about the characters, but more about the environment and setting and what's going on around you. It was such an awesome experience. Outside the absolutely amazing campaign, which is my favorite story in gaming history, the multiplayer is awesome too. Admit it, you've never had as much fun using melee weapons in a first-person shooter as you did with Griffball and Halo Reach. While overall for me, Halo 3 is still my favorite first-person shooter, or just shooter in general, of all time, Reach is definitely up there as well. Forge and Firefight are also amazing and serve their purpose well in the game. It's definitely a game worth trying. Number 4, Dark Souls from 2011. I certainly get that Dark Souls is a love it or hate it type of game. That's fairly obvious. I can see valid arguments from both sides. That being said, however, I am most certainly on the love it side of things. Never before have I finished a game and felt so rewarded, yet so empty inside. What I mean by that is, I still haven't, I feel like I still hadn't finished it, like there's still more work to be done. I did mention Bloodborne earlier on the list, and that's also an excellent game, but Dark Souls was the game that established From Software for me. This game holds special to me as one of my favorite games ever made because there's so much to it, even outside the game. There's this whole community of Dark Souls players, there's all this lore, and while the Dark Souls community might not be the nicest community out there, they certainly do represent Dark Souls in a good way. Dark Souls absolutely made From Software, there's no argument there. One of the best games ever made. Number 3, Red Dead Redemption 2, 2018. I cannot tell you how invested into playing Red Dead 2 I got once it came out. It's so good. The story is so investing. It pulls you in right from the get-go. The open world is unpredictable. There's random events literally everywhere you fucking go. It's so fun. Arthur Morgan was a character that you became attached to emotionally as time went on, along with the rest of the Vanderlyn gang, most of them anyway. It's a prequel, but an absolutely excellent one. I don't mean to downplay prequels, it's just Star Wars had prequels that people don't like. Rockstar put 7 years of hard work into Red Dead 2, and it definitely paid off. And while Red Dead Online might not have been quite as fun as it should have been, it's still there. It still was there to provide an extra option. And overall, the game is just spectacular in every sense of the word. Go pick it up now. Number 2, The Last of Us, 2013. I've never experienced investment in a video game quite like I did in The Last of Us. It was such an amazing story, and it takes my number 2 spot. Between number 1 and number 2, it was an extreme toss-up. Trust me, The Last of Us came out right at the end of the 7th gen, and what a way to end it off. Just absolutely fucking spectacular. The story was on Oscars levels. It was just another completely spectacular game. It's so unpredictable. With The Last of Us 2 on its way next year, I think that reflecting on this game was perfect for this video, a game that was more than deserving for a spot off the list, definitely worth trying, and it's my runner-up. Before we get to number 1, I'm going to go watch Mojo on you and say here are some honorable mentions. I have 5 honorable mentions on this list, and those are Grand Theft Auto 5 from 2013, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt from 2015, Marvel's Spider-Man from 2018, Persona 5 from 2017, and Batman Arkham City from 2011. And number 1, Skyrim from 2011. There are no English words that can really describe the legendary status that Skyrim has achieved as a game. I'm gonna work on a third review on it because I feel like I need to go over it and play it more, and as well as just not being very satisfied with my review, so stay tuned for another Skyrim review coming up. I'm getting up there with Todd Howard and the amount of times I've re-released something. Anyways, all that aside, there's really no denying how excellent Skyrim as a game is. It was absolutely huge. Skyrim was a legitimate phenomenon, bursting its way out of just the gaming industry into the mainstream media. Like, people lining up outside of GameStop for midnight releases. Even years after its initial release, Skyrim is still just as played, talked about, and given publicity as it was all those years ago. Such an excellent experience. Anyways, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed the list, that's amazing. Please support the channel by liking the videos and subscribing. I have multiple new videos on the way. But that's it, for now at least. I do want to mention one thing before I go. So if you're still watching, please listen to this. I do have a Discord server. And I desperately need more people on it, so I'll leave the link to the server down in the description, and you can join if you so please. That's it for the video, guys.